This discourse is on the fruit of the contemplative life, and the Pali term for that is samana-phala. Samana means a contemplative or a mendicant, and phala means fruit. It just so happens that in the Yoga Sutras the term phala shows up as well, and there's a description of similar fruit of the contemplative life. So in the Samana-phala Sutta, there are 11 fruit of the contemplative life described. The first one is equanimity, otherwise known as upekkha in Pali. Equanimity is generally interpreted as the ability to be peaceful in a not-so-peaceful situation. But it also happens to be used to describe what occurs during the third jhana, or third ecstatic state. And that experience of equanimity is typically described by the contemplative as feeling as though they're as empty as a conduit, and sensation is just moving through them without their cognitive processes reacting to those sensations. So the second fruit of the contemplative life is fearlessness, and that is just getting to a place in one's contemplative life where one has no more fear. There's no fear of the dark, there's no fear of heights, there's no fear of shame, and any of the other fears that we carry around with us. The third fruit of the contemplative life is no suffering, or a freedom from basically the aches and pains, and perhaps more importantly, the anxieties of life. And it is Asukhacaadukkha. That's the actual Pali term used for it. And I think it more describes kind of the manic depressive side of life, in which we are on that roller coaster of, happiness and unhappiness, or that manic ups and downs part of life. People who lead a rigorous contemplative life usually get to the point where they're stable, they have equanimity, and they don't have these waves that they're going through. Excuse me. The fourth fruit of the contemplative life is described as jhana or samadhi, and the English for that is absorption into ecstatic, altered states of consciousness that are characterized by bliss and joy and tranquility, which is stillness of the mind, and equanimity, which is being so still inside that even the sensory phenomena doesn't elicit any reaction. And in fact, the fourth jhana then is getting to that Asukhacaadukkha space in which one doesn't have the ripples of the mind or the ripples of the emotions of a manic, depressive aspect of life. Now, what's interesting is that the fifth of the fruit of the contemplative life is a clear description of an out-of-body experience. The Pali term is Manomaya, but when we read a good translation of that stanza, it clearly describes an out-of-body experience. So apparently the Buddha recognized that out-of-body experiences were part of the contemplative life. And indeed, we've found that quite a number of the people who find ecstatic altered states of consciousness, otherwise known as jhana, in their meditations, very oftentimes they have more frequent out-of-body experiences, and those are usually experienced during the sleep state. Clairaudience is the next fruit of the contemplative life. That's the English translation for the Pali, which is dibba-sota, which literally means divine hearing or sacred hearing. And what we would call that, perhaps in a Christian context, is we'd call it charismatic hearing. And how that's typically described is that when somebody has engaged in a rigorous contemplative life for a fair amount of time, they begin to hear something a little bit like tinnitus, in which it might be maybe the sound of crickets, or a chirping sound like cicadas, or it might be a whistling sound, or maybe the sound of the ocean, or rain, or the wind. Those are the kinds of sounds that people hear. As a matter of fact, there seems to be actually a stage to those sounds in which one might begin by hearing cricket sounding, but after many years it might sound like heavenly choirs or maybe just a strange whistling sound, high-frequency whistling sound. Okay, the seventh fruit of the contemplative life is mental telepathy, or intuitive insight into people and things and situations. Eighth fruit of the contemplative life is recollection of one's past lifetimes. And how that oftentimes is done, in my experience, is it can either be done in an out-of-body experience in which one travels out of body to a previous lifetime and relives it, or it can occur during a meditation experience in which a recollection of a previous lifetime just unfolds like a cinematic movie. The next fruit of the contemplative life, the ninth one, is divine seeing, or charismatic seeing, and its term is dibba-cakkhu. Cakkhu means eye, and dibba means sacred or holy or elevated. And clairvoyance really is not just perhaps seeing into the future and the past, or seeing at a remote location, but it can also, during meditation, it can basically involve hallucinations, or what we would call hallucinations. And for instance, one might see a spiritual master manifest before one, and or it might just be scintillating, vibratory, almost a kind of a paisley-like pattern in one's visual field. Oh, and it can also be luminous spheres. Some people see luminous spheres. In fact, I've seen luminous spheres. So there's a wide range of visual hallucinatory phenomena that one can see as one progresses deeper into meditation states. The next one, the 10th fruit of the contemplative life, is the ending of anxiety. And what that is all that dukkha, it becomes adukkha, and it's just the stress and anxiety of life. You know, if you've developed equanimity, you're no longer going to be having all these, reactive, emotional experiences towards life. So the mind is still, and the emotions become still as well. Okay, so now the 11th and last fruit of the contemplative life is called nanadassana, and it means knowledge and vision. And I interpret that as insight, in which we gain insight into philosophy and the contemplative life, and insight into our own personal character. Because I believe the contemplative life is not just about, doing endless mental exercises. It's really about becoming self-aware. Thank you.